Hello, greetings, fellow trekkers and trekkers. Arya here, and it's time once again for another installment of my series of videos called Star Trek: A Celebration of 60 Years. So today's topic is going to be all about how I got into Star Trek, and it's actually kind of an interesting story. So imagine me as a kid in the early 90s. I go into my dad's room, and what is he watching? The latest episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, or maybe a rerun of an episode from a previous season, or whatever. So I go to his room, we watch the episode together for a little bit, and then I fall asleep. Because as a little kid, that was pretty much basically when I decided to take a nap. So there you go. But it wasn't until I got older that I started watching episodes in full and fully understanding what I was watching, so there's that. Now, of course, also when I was growing up, my dad had recorded several episodes of the original series on video, so that's how I got into the original series. And not only that, but he also had the first 4 movies on VHS as well. So that was my introduction to the film series. Well, mainly the films I hadn't seen already, like the films that were out before I was born, like the motion picture, Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, and Voyage Home. That, of course, is my all-time favorite Star Trek movie, so there's that. But yeah, anyway. Now, of course, then eventually I did get to watch Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, because one of my grandma's friends actually bought me a VHS copy of that movie. And she knew I was a big Star Trek fan, so I was like, great, that's awesome. So I bet you're wondering, well, you probably were tuned to see The Undiscovered Country, right? And yes, I was. As a matter of fact, I didn't watch that movie until my teen years when my grandma and I, or actually much younger than that actually, when my grandma and I would go to one of our local libraries, and I would browse around in the VHS section, and especially in the science fiction section. And during one of those times, that's when I discovered Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. And so I remember checking that out and watching it for the first time, and I was like, okay, this is a good movie. I like this. And then that was also the same thing with Generations, because I was too young to see Generations when it came out. So that's how I watched Generations for the first time, was checking it out from one of the local libraries that my grandma would go to back when you could check out VHS tapes. So there's that. But yeah, anyway. So what was the first Star Trek movie that I saw in theaters, you may ask? Well, it was actually Star Trek First Contact. Yes, a PG-13 movie, by the way. But thankfully, my dad and we went together to go see it, and I really enjoyed it. And I eventually saw the other films in theaters as well, Insurrection, Nemesis, the 2009 movie, Into Darkness, and Beyond. So there's that. So yeah, anyway. And then eventually, like I said, I watched the other shows that were out in the 90s, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and then in the 2000s, of course, we had Enterprise. And then with the streaming shows, I'd only seen the first episode of Discovery, but then later on, during the pandemic, back when I was living with my mom, we watched the first season of Star Trek Picard together, and we both really enjoyed it. So, yeah. And to this day, I mainly credit my dad for getting me into Star Trek because, he was the one that introduced me to this franchise. However, there was one part of the franchise that I discovered completely by myself one day when I was at a Walmart, and it was Star Trek the Animated Series. I never even heard of a Star Trek animated series before. It was there at Walmart on DVD, and I bought it. And to this day, I do not regret it because, wow, that's definitely something. Like mid-70s animation. It's like, yeah, you could definitely tell that this is definitely, definitely mid-70s animation with like the reuse of clips and reuse of music throughout the entire 2 season run of this show. So, yeah. But anyway, so that's basically the story of how I got into Star Trek. Now I want to hear from you guys. How did you get into Star Trek? What was the first episode you ever watched? What was the first movie you saw? And so on and so forth. So let me know down the stuff in the comments section. And so, yeah. So, next on the list is going to be my ranking of the Star Trek shows. It's mainly the ones I've seen in full. So, this is going to be me ranking from the original series to Enterprise. So, yeah. And if you know me, then you probably know which show I'm probably going to put at number one. But if you don't, well, then you're going to be pleasantly surprised. So, yeah. So, anyway, until next time, live long and prosper, and have a great rest of your day.